9 a.m. March 24th. Less than a day after Alex Aya crashed out in the fourth round, the crisis meeting began. The WTA's top brass gathered at Hard Rock Stadium ready for the standard debrief on ticket sales, merch, and ratings. What they discovered wasn't just bad, it was a bombshell, a $4.7 million hole in the Miami Open's projections. Sponsors were screaming for refunds, broadcasters threatened to rip up their contracts. And the spreadsheet laid the blame squarely on one 20-year-old Filipina who didn't make the deep run they'd bet on. The finger-pointing was instant. When the official statement dropped, the tennis world was rocked. The WTA didn't blame the rain or their own chaotic schedule. They targeted Alex, the very star of their marketing machine. March 24, 2026. In that Miami conference room, the tension was thick enough to choke on. The 2026 Miami Open was supposed to shatter profit records. Ticket sales had exploded by 48%, driven by a tidal wave of Filipino fans there for Alex Aya. Her name was gold, moving 57% of all merchandise, more than all other players combined. Across the Philippines and beyond, broadcast ratings didn't just break records, they obliterated them. But when the accountants finished, the numbers told a horror story. The tournament had banked on $47.2 million in revenue, the reality $42.5 million, a staggering $4.7 million shortfall that sent tremors through the sport. How does a sold-out event lose money? The answer was buried in the fine print. The ticket frenzy was real, but it was dangerously concentrated on Aya's court times. When she fell in the fourth round, the value of premium tickets for the later rounds, the quarters, semis, and finals, all hyped around her potential run, plummeted on the secondary market. Sponsors who paid top dollar for courtside ads during her matches felt cheated out of exposure. Broadcast partners with prime-time slots reserved for her were left with dead air. The final nail in the coffin was insurance. Key sponsors had bet on her reaching at least the semifinals. Her fourth-round exit triggered massive payouts that bled the tournament's revenue dry. The final number was devastating. The 2026 Miami Open would be the first in a decade to operate in the red, and the WTA needed a scapegoat. Within hours, a leaked document ignited a firestorm across the tennis world. An internal memo marked confidential gave a brutal and unforgiving assessment of the financial failure. It read, "The over-reliance on a single player created an unsustainable revenue model. When that player failed to advance, the tournament's financial structure collapsed." The memo tore into the marketing strategy, claiming the organization had gambled everything on one star. But the most venomous part came next. While Alexandra Aya's popularity is undeniable, her inability to deliver deep tournament runs represents a systemic risk to events that rely on her. Future marketing must account for the volatility of a player who is yet to prove she can meet financial projections. The memo never mentioned the 37 matches cancelled by rain delays. It ignored the scheduling chaos that left players waiting for hours on end. It conveniently forgot the $4.7 million sponsorship shortfall that existed before Aya's fame even peaked. Instead, it aimed its fire at a 20-year-old whose only crime was playing tennis. The leak triggered an immediate backlash. Filipino fans were livid, demanding why the WTA blamed Aya for its own blunders. Analysts noted that making $42.5 million was hardly a catastrophe. Players began to speak up. "Maybe the WTA should look in the mirror before they go after a kid," one veteran posted anonymously. But the narrative was set. The damage was done. Alex Aya was now the face of the Miami Open's failure. But then a different story began to emerge from the data. A story the WTA's memo had deliberately ignored. It started with the weather. Unprecedented storms had relentlessly battered the tournament's first week. March 15th was a complete washout. All qualifiers and practice sessions cancelled. By March 18th, it was a full-blown shutdown with 37 matches wiped from the schedule. Stars like Venus Williams and Matteo Berrettini waited hours before the day was declared a total washout. That cancellation cost over $2 million in lost sales and necessary refunds. Insurance covered a portion, but then came the sponsorship problems. Multiple sponsors had player insurance policies based on Aya's old ranking. She was number 29 when they signed, but had slipped to 51 by the tournament's start. Their policies were based on old data. Then came the networks who'd paid top dollar assuming she'd make the quarterfinals. Her fourth-round loss created a 23% void in expected viewership. They filled the time but demanded their money back. That $4.7 million hole was not Aya's fault. The fault belonged to an organization that bet its entire financial strategy on one player's performance. They never planned for the reality that a 20-year-old rising star might not go deep in every tournament. The WTA blamed Aya for its own short-sightedness. "You don't hang a $47 million model on one player," an economist stated. "That's just bad business." When word of the WTA's internal finger-pointing leaked, the tennis world ignited. Filipino fans who had traveled the globe to see their hero were incensed. Social media erupted defending Aya and blasting the WTA. They built their whole campaign around her, then scapegoated her. A fan wrote, "That's not leadership, that's just gutless." Another added, "Aya sold out arenas. She crashed ticket sites. She outsold the field." And they blame her for losing one match. Unbelievable. The players began to speak up, first anonymously, then putting their names to it. Jessica Pegula, who saw the Aya phenomenon up close in their 2025 Miami semifinal, spoke out. "I don't think you can pin that on Alex. She's a fantastic player, draws massive crowds, and was a total professional. The business end of things isn't her problem." Coco Gauff, Aya's friend, was even more blunt. "Alex is 20. She's out there giving everything she has. If the tournament bet the house on her and lost, that's not on her. That is their issue." Even the legendary Billie Jean King, the WTA's founder, offered a measured response. "I created the WTA to give women a platform to succeed, not to be scapegoats for corporate failure," King's statement read. "Alex Aya is the future. We should be lifting her up, not tearing her down." The public fury grew so intense the WTA was forced to issue a new statement, walking back the memo. "The WTA is fully dedicated to supporting Alexandra Aya and all of our players," the release stated. It claimed the memo was simply a broad financial analysis not meant to assign fault to any one player. "We regret the misunderstanding, but the harm was done." A light had been shone on the WTA's inner workings. The bond between the tour and its players, already strained by past controversies, was now shattered. Through the storm, Alex Aya remained poised. She had left Miami after her loss, going home to rest before the clay season. As the scandal erupted, she was with her family, far from the media frenzy. Her team simply said Alex is focused on her recovery and has no comment on external matters. But sources said she was wounded, not by the unfair charge, but because she'd poured her soul into the sport she loved. She survived a 3-hour and 20-minute war against Laura Siegemund, overcoming tactics that would have shattered others. She ground out a tough second set against Magdalinette with the poise of a seasoned champion. She strode onto center court against the formidable Karolina Muchova, the 13th seed, and she battled to the last ball. Her run ended, but not in disaster, and instead of getting credit, instead of being hailed for bringing millions of new fans to the game, the WTA pinned their own failures on her. "She's a certified rock star," a paper had just written. "Wherever she goes, a loud, massive crowd makes it feel like a home game." But the WTA boardroom, it seemed, was not home. With the Miami firestorm behind her, Alex focused on the clay. Her next stop was the WTA 500 event in Linz, Austria on April 6th. From there, her path led to Madrid for the first big clay tournament, then Rome, and finally Roland Garros. Clay was her proving ground. It was on clay she forged the patience and tactical genius that defined her, and it would be on clay that she would aim to finally conquer the Czech curse that had shadowed her career. The Czechs were her kryptonite, a brutal 0-12 record sealed by Karolina Mucha. But clay is a different beast. It offers a weapon hard courts deny time to craft points, find openings, and unlock solutions. For a strategist like Eala, that time could be everything. But as one analyst put it, the tour waits for no one. As the WTA imploded over the Miami disaster, Eala turned her gaze to the clay. Heading into Linz, the past few weeks were a harsh education she wouldn't soon forget. "I've been under the brightest lights in the toughest spots," she'd remarked post-Linette match, "and I wouldn't trade it." Back in the 4th round, it was familiar territory, yet everything had changed. Because she had changed, she'd evolved. She'd stared down the giants of the game and earned her place, and when she steps onto the clay in Linz, in Madrid, in Rome, in Paris, she'll carry a conviction no WTA statement can shake. The spreadsheets could lie. She wasn't the issue. She was the answer. Then the WTA did the unthinkable, stunning the entire tennis world. A leaked memo laid it bare. The organization blamed Alex Aya for the Miami Open's $4.7 million shortfall, ignoring the 37 matches cancelled by rain. The sponsor deals built on fantasy and the fact Aya's ticket sales dwarfed everyone else combined. The reaction was swift and savage. Fans revolted. Players broke their silence. The legendary Billie Jean King stepped in, issuing a stark reminder: you don't blame athletes for management's mistakes. Through the entire mess, Aya said nothing. She left Miami with 120 ranking points, $15,720 in prize money, and a quiet climb to number 45. Her eyes were on the clay season now, to Linz, to Madrid, to the French Open. The WTA could spin its narrative, but the fans knew the truth. The players knew the real story, and Alexia, at 20 years old, knew that she wasn't the problem. She's the future. Was the WTA out of line for scapegoating Aya for the Miami financial disaster? Sound off in the comments below. Subscribe to Court Legacy for daily WTA news, deep dive breakdowns, and the stories behind the scoreline, because at Court Legacy the game never stops.